Chapter 534. Saga town was located 50 kilometers south of the forest by a small river. There were only 10,000 general corps generals in the town. Of course, it was still much bigger than those general corps tribes. Moreover, because the general corps generals were larger in size, the town was also very big. If a human came here, they would probably think that it was a big city. Saga town's defense was extremely strong. With their defense, super-evolved general corps beasts below the 5th rank would not be able to break through. In the entire forest, super-evolved general corps beasts above the 5th rank were extremely rare. Moreover, those general corps beasts were in the depths of the forest and occupied the best resources. They would not leave the forest. Only those weaker general corps beasts would be pushed to the outskirts of the forest. They would not even go out of the forest to look for food. That was why Saga town was able to stand at the edge of the forest for over 10,000 years. At this moment, the mayor heard the report from the patrol and asked, "Can you find out what kind of general corps beasts are coming?" The patrol shook his head and said, "It's too far, I can't see clearly. But I can see that there are a lot of them, maybe more than 10,000. Because each general corps ant was not big, only the size of a house cat. But ordinary general corps beasts were around 100 meters tall. Therefore, when the patrolling soldier looked from afar, he estimated that the 300,000 corps commander ants were only 10,000 based on the dust raised by the corps commander beasts. When the mayor heard that it was only 10,000 general corps beasts, his expression relaxed. He waved his hand and said to the patrol, "Investigate more. See what kind of general corps beasts it is, so that we can find the most suitable way to deal with them." Then, the mayor went to the window and looked at the towering mountain in the distance. He said, "There are many general corps beasts in this forest. But they usually move alone. It is very rare to see a group of over 1,000. I have only seen 3 groups of over 10,000 in my life. What I can be sure of is that the larger the number, the weaker their individual combat strength. It can be seen how weak the individual combat strength of 10,000 general corps beasts is. The method to deal with such a group of general corps beasts is very simple. We need to show off their weaknesses and avoid their strengths. We just need to divide them into several large areas. Divide them into a dozen or even dozens of small groups, and you can easily defeat them one by one." The attendant nodded his head. "Lord Mayor is wise." The mayor continued, "Go and prepare." The lackey nodded. "Yes, Mayor." Very quickly, the 10,000 general corpses in Saga town entered a busy state. They quickly pushed out thousands of huge metal frames that were more than 5 meters tall. These metal racks were about 50 meters wide and 500 meters tall. It was large at the bottom and small at the top. Its 2 sides were wrapped tightly in metal, and there were many large metal spikes on it. The shelves were filled with heavy stones. At the top, there was a metal plate that looked like a passageway. When these shelves were connected together, they formed a solid and thick wall. The general corps could still walk on top of the roof. Under the mayor's command, the corps generals connected the racks into several pocket formations. In this way, they could use these pocket formations to separate the corps beasts. The general corps beasts would be able to surround and attack the general corps beasts from the top of the high wall. The mayor stood on the top of the high wall and issued a pre-war mobilization. Last time, the higher-ups selected soldiers to attack that flaming initial continent. Aren't you regretful that you weren't selected? Now, there is an opportunity in front of you. This time, when the general corps beasts attack, if any of you perform outstandingly in battle and kill the top 10 enemies, I can recommend you to become a soldier. When the general corps generals heard this, their eyes lit up. They were pleasantly surprised. Roar, 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 they roared in unison. None of them wanted to stay in this place for the rest of their lives. They were youths with dreams and ambitions. But without a special opportunity, they could only stay in Saga town for the rest of their lives. This was the law of the general corpse world. But if they became soldiers, they would have the chance to go to other places. They would have the chance to make a name for themselves. They might even have the chance to invade that weak flaming initial continent. As long as they could go to the flaming initial continent, it would be a chance for any general corpse to make a name for themselves. At the same time, it would be a great opportunity to make a fortune. The mayor raised his hand and continued to speak passionately. He said, "Therefore, all of you brave potential warriors, all of you, fight with all your might. Chase after your life's dream and win a beautiful tomorrow for all of you." One had to admit that the mayor was an expert at cooking chicken soup. When the general corpse generals heard this, they all raised their fists and roared at the sky, roar, 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 roar. However, while dreams were beautiful, reality was not necessarily as the general corpse generals wanted. Just as they got into formation and were in high spirits, the corpse general beast in the distance suddenly stopped moving. After waiting for about 20 minutes, there was still no sign of the general corpse beasts. The mayor called the patrolling soldier over and asked, "Did you find any traces of the general corpse beasts?" The patrolling soldier smiled bitterly and said that group of general corpse beasts suddenly disappeared. The mayor narrowed his eyes and turned to look at the patrolling soldier. "Disappeared? What do you mean?" The patrolling soldier replied, "They disappeared." The mayor's eyes narrowed into slits. "I'm not asking what you mean." Hearing this, the patrolling soldier trembled slightly. The narrower the mayor's eyes were, the angrier he was. And when the mayor was extremely angry, he would swear. He continued to explain, that is, there was a large amount of smoke and dust that they kicked up earlier. From the observation mirror, I could see countless black general corpse beasts at the front. They seemed to be general ants. But suddenly, the general corpse beasts disappeared. It was as if something had suddenly taken them away. Hearing this, the mayor's squinted eyes opened slightly. He looked at the distant horizon, at the faintly discernible smoke and dust that was about to disappear. His expression became much more serious. He had been the mayor of Saga town for over 200 years. During this time, he had encountered at least 80, if not 100, attacks from general corpse beasts. But he had never encountered such a strange situation. As far as he knew, there were no general corpse beasts that were capable of invisibility or spatial skills. If what the patrolling soldier said was true, then there must be some unknown secret behind this. At this moment, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He abruptly raised his head and looked at the sky. In the sky, there was a human with wings condensed from energy on his back. He was quietly floating there. Chapter 535. When the mayor looked up, he saw a human with a pair of wings condensed from blood-red energy in the sky. This human was dressed in black and was quietly observing them from the sky. The mayor immediately felt a chill run down his spine, and his hair stood on end. His sparse beard was no longer fluttering in the wind. Instead, it was standing up. A chill ran down his spine from the soles of his feet. It traveled along his legs to his torso, and finally to his brain. It made him feel so cold from the bottom to the top. He could not help but tremble slightly. Imagine if you were doing your own thing and suddenly felt that something was wrong. When you looked up, you would find someone quietly floating in the sky, watching you. And it seemed that he had been floating there for a long time. Are you scared? The other general corpse generals followed the mayor's gaze and looked up at the sky. With one look, they also felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts. Especially when the guy in the sky was a human. This caused them to be even more terrified. How could there be a human in their general corpse world? This did not make sense at all. It was like one day, when you looked up, you suddenly found an ant quietly floating in the sky with a cold face, quietly watching you. Are you scared? But in addition to the fear, they were also a little angry. In their eyes, humans were weak and could not withstand a single blow. And now, this mere human had suddenly appeared here, giving them a fright. Moreover, he was looking at them with a look of contempt. How could they not be angry? The mayor's eyes were already narrowed in anger. He shouted, "Kill this human, and you can become a warrior." For a human to suddenly appear in the general corpse world, this matter must be very strange. If they could capture or kill this human, they would definitely be rewarded greatly. Then, becoming a warrior would no longer be an extravagant hope. As for why the general corpse generals of the tribes did not have such awareness. This was because the general corpse generals of the tribes were like the natives living in the Amazon jungle on Earth. They were completely separated from the general corpse generals of these towns, which was equivalent to two completely different general corpse generals. At this moment, the general corpse generals were instantly provoked by the mayor's words. They slowly let out beast-like roars. Black veins bulged on their right arms. A cracking sound came from his right arm. Then, the bones in their right arms began to grow rapidly. Sharp bone spikes grew out of it. The bone spikes pierced through the skin of their right hands and grew rapidly. In the end, it grew into a spear. These general corpses were basically 200 to 300 meters tall. The spears they condensed were more than 10 meters thick and more than 500 meters long. Following this, the tens of thousands of general corpses all threw their 500-meter-long spears at Immortal. However, when their spears were less than 100 meters away from Immortal, a strange scene occurred. Their spears suddenly stopped in midair, as if they were blocked by an invisible hand. Then, they fell to the ground one after another. All the corpse generals were shocked. How could this human be so strong? What they had learned since they were young was that humans were weak, very weak. They could stomp him to death with a single stomp. However, the human in front of them was stronger than they had imagined. He had blocked the bone spears of over 10,000 general corpses by himself. This was truly too shocking for him. Then, he roared at all the general corpses, "Attack with all your might." What he meant by attacking with all their might was that all the general corpses should use their ultimate moves right away. They should not hold back at all. Of course, the general corpses' ultimate moves would take a bit longer. Therefore, 5,000 general corpses planned to use their ultimate moves. The remaining 5,000 general corpses were ready to defend themselves. They could not allow these general corpses' ultimate moves to be interrupted. However, at this moment, the human in the sky who had been in a state of stillness all this time suddenly moved. However, this movement was not big. He only waved his right hand slightly. In the next moment, a large black mass of things suddenly appeared in the sky. When these things appeared, they almost instantly covered the entire Saga town. The town instantly became somewhat dark. In the next moment, these 300,000 general corpses descended from the sky. This unforeseen event came too suddenly, and the general corpses were completely unprepared. The 300,000 general corpses descended from the sky and quickly began to devour any living thing they could see. They devoured the general corpses raised by the general corpses. In less than 10 seconds, those general corpses slowly became skeletons. After a while, not even the skeletons were left. A few general corpses descended from the sky and landed on a general corpses. In almost an instant, the general corpse's head was bitten and bloody wounds appeared. He kept screaming, trying to kill these general corpses. However, these general corpses had extremely tenacious vitality. It looked like they had been slapped flat, but when the corpse commander ants removed their hands, these corpse commander ants were like inflated balloons as they quickly swelled up. At the same time, hundreds of general corpses landed on this general corpses. They kept biting and tearing at his body. Horrifying wounds that were so deep that bones could be seen quickly appeared on his body. In less than a minute, this general corpses was gnawed until only bones were left. His horrified screams also disappeared. At the same time, a similar scene was happening in every corner of Saga town. The entire Sagwa town reeked of blood. If one looked down from the sky, this place no longer looked like a peaceful town. Instead, it looked like a slaughterhouse and hell. How could 10,000 general corpses withstand the attack of 300,000 general corpses? Moreover, these general corpses were organized and disciplined. This was even more incredible. A rain of general corpses fell from the sky. A dark red mist of blood floated up from Sagwa town. Mosher watched as his kill points continued to increase. His face was expressionless. These general corpses' dream was to become warriors and invade the flaming continent. Then they would not have to blame themselves for their deaths. Mosher would not have the slightest bit of pity for them. At the same time, the smell of blood had already drifted to the forest in the distance. In the forest, the thousands of general corpses all roared excitedly when they smelled the smell of blood. Mosher was a little surprised when he heard the roars. However, he quickly came back to his senses. If the smell of blood could attract more general corpses after killing these general corpses, it would be killing two birds with one stone. As expected, when the last general corpses were killed, a group of general corpses had already kicked up a cloud of dust in the distant sky. Chapter 536. Actually, using 300,000 corpse general ants to attack 10,000 corpse general ants was a risky move. After all, the corpse general ants were not as brainless as the corpse general beasts. Moreover, the corpse general ants had many skills and their ultimate moves as a foundation. However, Mosher was in charge of the overall situation. Wherever the corpse general ants could not handle, he would lend a helping hand. This allowed the 300,000 corpse general ants to easily take care of 10,000 corpse general ants. At this moment, a cloud of dust rose from the ground in the distance. Mosher's draconic perception enveloped the area and discovered that thousands of corpse general beasts were charging towards them. Moreover, these corpse general beasts were not of low levels. They were basically super-evolved corpse general beasts. Mosher probed for a moment and discovered that the number of these corpse beast commanders reached a total of 50,000. They must have been attracted by the smell of the corpse general beast's blood. After all, the corpse general ants love to eat corpse general beasts. However, the defenses here were too strong and they could not break in. Now that they smelled such a strong smell of blood, they knew that something must have happened to the corpse general beasts in Sagwa town. Mosher looked at the corpse general beasts rolling towards him like a flood. Not only did he not panic, but he was also delighted. Slaughtering a corpse general town had attracted 50,000 corpse general beasts. This was a pleasant surprise. Soon, the corpse general beasts arrived outside the town. However, there was a pocket formation set up outside the town. These corpse general beasts were naturally divided into hundreds of small groups. Each group only had about 500 corpse general beasts. Mosher moved the metal racks with his mind and sealed all the pockets in the pocket formation. Then, he threw 300,000 corpse general ants into one of the pockets. How could 500 corpse general beasts withstand the bites of 300,000 corpse general ants? In a short 5 minutes, they were completely devoured by the 300,000 corpse general ants. Then, the corpse general ants crawled to the next pocket. As for the corpse general ant queen, Mosher specially left an empty pocket for her. The corpse general ants would naturally cut the dead corpse general beasts into small pieces and send them to the corpse general ant queen. As the corpse general ants ate, they also laid eggs. When the sky turned dark, the 50,000 corpse general beasts had all been cleared out. The entire Sagwa town had long been enveloped in the thick smell of blood. The corpse ants ate until their stomachs were bloated. On that day, the corpse general ant queen gave birth to another 1,000 flying corpse general ants. Now that the number of corpse general ants had begun to take shape, it wouldn't be a problem to slaughter these small towns. What Mosher needed now were aerial troops. At this moment, he looked at the kill points in his mind. This time, the massacre of Saga town had earned him more than 6 trillion kill points. It was really worth it. Of course, it was still much less than the 10,000 trillion required to level up. But it didn't matter, there were countless small towns in the general corpse world. As long as he slaughtered a few more towns, he would be able to level up again very quickly. After that, Immortal kept the corpse commander ants into Earth space. His figure flashed, and he disappeared. The next moment, he appeared above another small town more than 800 kilometers away. There were more than 10,000 general corpses in this town. Night had just fallen. The corpse generals of this small town had just returned from their work in the fields and were currently sitting around a bonfire. They sang, danced, rapped, and played a ball game. But it was definitely not a basketball game. This place was already far away from the forest, so it was basically impossible for a large number of corpse general beasts to come here. So there weren't even any patrolling soldiers in the town. Everyone was very relaxed. Immortal moved his mind and more than 300,000 corpse general ants were thrown down from the sky. A moment later, screams, shouts, cries, and curses were heard. An hour later, these sounds gradually disappeared. Immortal's kill points had increased by more than 1 trillion. Immortal teleported again and arrived at another small town hundreds of kilometers away. At this moment, many of the corpse general ants in this small town had already fallen asleep. Immortal still threw down the corpse general ants. An hour later, he gained another 1 trillion kill points. Just like this, Immortal continued to slaughter these small towns day after day. His kill points kept increasing. At the same time, the number of corpse general ants kept increasing. Gradually, the total number of corpse general ants reached over 500,000. Among them, the number of flying corpse general ants had also reached 50,000. And Immortal's kill points had also reached 5,000 trillion. As long as he continued for a while, he would be able to level up again. At the same time, in Naten Prefecture's capital city, Naten City. These were the hundreds of small towns within 100,000 kilometers of Naten Prefecture. As for Naten City, it was the largest city within a radius of 100,000 kilometers. The number of corpse general ants living here was close to 1 million. But because the distance between the small towns was too far, and the technology of the corpse general ants was not that advanced, communication was inconvenient. So it wasn't until today that the master of Naten City received the news that several towns had been massacred. At this moment, the princess frowned slightly. She said to a strategist beside her, "What do you think about the massacring of many small towns?" That strategist replied, "It must be a group of people with average strength and numbers." Why? The princess's right finger kept drawing on her eyebrows as she asked. That strategist said, "Because they only dared to attack those remote towns. They didn't dare to get too close to our Naten city. I think it's very likely that they were fugitives who had escaped into the forest in the past. As time passed, their numbers increased. So they started to come out and rob these small towns." The princess pondered for a moment and nodded, Your guess is correct." Then she called in a warrior. She said, "I'll give you 50,000 men. You have 1 month to find out the whereabouts of those bandits and eliminate them in one fell swoop." Hearing this, the warrior was instantly overjoyed. This meant that the princess was promoting him. Although those bandits were fugitives, they were also a motley crew. In front of these trained warriors, they were completely vulnerable. Moreover, the princess had given him 50,000 warriors. This was a perfect opportunity for him to earn credit for himself. As long as he seized this opportunity, his promotion was basically set in stone. Thinking of this, he quickly bowed to the princess. "Thank you, princess." So, early the next morning, this warrior led 50,000 warriors and rode on a corpse general ant that was more than 400 meters long toward the border of Naten Prefecture. Finally, after 3 days, they had already investigated a few small towns. Based on the tracks of these towns' destruction, they had a rough idea of Mo Shi's route. Thus, they predicted that the next town that those bandits would destroy was Vilar Town. They had set up an ambush in Vilar Town in advance, waiting for the bandits to arrive. Chapter 537. That afternoon, the sky in the west was crimson. The rare sunset glow dyed the entire Vilar Town crimson. The general corpses in the town all had smiles on their faces that had not appeared for a long time. These days, they had heard rumors. They said that a group of bandits kept slaughtering the nearby towns. Everywhere they passed, there was not a town that was not slaughtered. Moreover, this group of bandits came and went without a trace. Therefore, it had already caused a certain amount of panic. Fortunately, the princess had sent people today. And it was 50,000 soldiers. These 50,000 soldiers were already lying in ambush around the town. This made the townspeople feel much more at ease. If those bandits dared to attack Vilar Town, they would definitely not be able to return. Therefore, the townspeople of Vilar Town, who had been nervous for so many days, could finally relax today. At this moment, the soldier hidden in the dark, Babu, looked at the setting sun on the horizon. He had already waited for a day. According to the time, that group of bandits should have appeared. He could not help but grip the long sword at his waist tightly. This was the best opportunity to make a name for himself. At the same time, Mo Shi quietly appeared in the sky. He scanned with his dragon will and detected the appearance of the 50,000 soldiers. The corner of his mouth could not help but curl into a smile. Just as he was complaining that this way of earning kill points was not fast enough, they sent 50,000 kill points over. It was really timely help. Then, with a move of his dragon will, he instantly controlled the 50,000 soldiers. These general corpses' self-healing abilities were extremely strong. Although his dragon will could not kill them, he could control them. Then, he threw the 500,000 general corpse ants to the ground. A general corpse had just picked up a skewer of barbecued meat and was about to eat it. Suddenly, something fell on this piece of barbecued meat. Then, it quickly climbed onto his hand. Then, a piercing pain came from his finger. He screamed and hurriedly raised his left hand to slap that thing. But in the next moment, a piercing pain came from his left hand. Then, his neck, ears, arms, and nose were covered with general corpse ants. A piercing pain came from everywhere. At the same time, the general corpses around him also screamed. When they raised their heads, they saw a dense rain of general corpse ants falling from the sky. Faced with the sudden appearance of tens of thousands of corpse general ants, they simply had no way to deal with them. They wanted to escape the town. However, they discovered that there seemed to be an invisible wall around the town, blocking them inside. No matter how much strength they used, they were unable to break through the wall. Finally, with a miserable shriek, one of the corpse generals fell to the ground. A moment later, only a skeleton was left. More than 10 seconds later, even the bones had disappeared. Then the second, the third, the fourth, countless corpse commander ants fell from the sky. The commander corpses fell to the ground one by one, and were devoured clean one after another. When the soldiers hiding in the dark saw this scene, they were all terrified. Previously, they had thought that they were facing a motley crew. They never expected that they would be facing hundreds of thousands of corpse general ants. If that was the case, they could still fight and think of a way to escape. However, the most terrifying thing was that they were unable to move at all. They could only watch as the corpse commander ants devoured the townspeople. Moreover, it was obvious that they had been discovered. Then, they were bound by some kind of enemy skill. Otherwise, they would not be unable to move at all. In other words, after the corpse general ants devoured the townspeople, their next target would be the 50,000 corpse commander warriors. In fact, they were right. After the corpse general ants devoured the townspeople, they leaped into the forest and began to devour the corpse commander warriors who could not move at all. In the sky, Missouri Sure watched all of this with indifference, without the slightest bit of pity in his heart. 2 hours later, all of the townspeople had been devoured. Mo Sure led the 500,000 corpse general ants to the next location. A day later, in Naten City. The princess looked at the sky in the west and asked the servant beside her, "Is there still no news from Babu?" Previously, he had instructed Babu to send a bird message 3 times a day to report back to him. However, an entire day had passed, and there was not even a single bird message. The servant nodded, yes. The princess frowned slightly and said, "There must be a problem. Send a small team to investigate and have them report back as soon as possible." The servant hurriedly nodded, "Yes, princess." In the following days, Mo Sure continued to massacre the townspeople. The people the princess sent out to investigate returned with more and more information that made the princess more and more alarmed. All of the townspeople of Wuxia Town have disappeared, and there is no trace of Babu. All of the townspeople of Skoda Town have disappeared, and there is no trace of Babu. All of the townspeople of Naris Town have disappeared, and there is no trace of Babu. Of course, the letter said disappeared, and not died. However, the tracking team sent by the princess showed that these people were definitely dead. This was because the ground of all the towns where the townspeople had disappeared was dyed dark red with blood. Other than the lack of corpses, everything else showed that there had been a massacre here. This made the princess more and more alarmed. The most frightening thing was that based on the location of the massacred towns, the bandits were heading towards Naten City. Although there were still 50,000 soldiers and 400,000 general corpses in the city. But with the strength of these bandits, Naten City would not be able to withstand them. By now, he already knew that these fellows were not simple thieves. As for what they were, he could not say for sure. He could only do his best to set up defenses in the city. Fortunately, there was still the corpse ancestor in the city, which made him feel slightly more at ease. The corpse ancestor was an existence that was stronger than the super-evolved general corpses. No matter how strong the enemies were, they could not be stronger than the corpse ancestor. Therefore, other than restricting the general corpses in the city from going out, he did not need to do anything. He just needed to wait for those guys to arrive. On this day, the number of general corpses under Mo Sure's command had reached 900,000. The kill points in his mind had reached 9,960 trillion. He was only 40 trillion away from leveling up again. He looked straight ahead at the majestic city wall on the horizon. That was Naten City. The main city of the entire Naten City. At that time, there were 400,000 general corpses. It was just enough to reach 10,000 trillion kill points. This made Mo Sure slightly excited. However, he was still slightly worried about one thing. According to the current situation, after reaching the 7th level, if he wanted to level up again, he would need to kill 1 billion general corpses or general corpses. Based on the current situation of the continent of general corpses, although there were many general corpses in the continent of general corpses, reaching trillions. However, they lived very far apart. The city with the largest number of general corpses only had about 10 million. There were only 4 such cities in the world. It would be difficult to kill 1 billion. As expected, the kill points system was going to collapse. Chapter 538. There were more than 400,000 general corpses in Rutan City. After slaughtering all of them, he would be able to collect the 10,000 trillion kill points needed for his advancement. Mo Sure didn't care whether the system's kill point system would break down or not. He would think about it after he advanced to rank 7. Thinking of this, his figure flashed and he appeared above Rutan City. At this time, in the princess residence in Rutan City. The princess and a group of strategists were in the meeting hall. The princess didn't look good, and the strategists didn't dare to look good either. The princess first coughed a few times and coughed out a mouthful of phlegm in her throat. Then she said in a low voice, "Those bandits still haven't been caught. Not only have we not caught them, we haven't even seen them. We only know that wherever they go, they will massacre the entire city." She could be so vicious and merciless, and she could also appear and disappear like a ghost. "Tell me, all of you who are experienced and knowledgeable. Who are they?" The strategists thought for a moment and said, "Princess, I heard that there are mountain elves in the forest. Could it be the mountain elves causing trouble?" As soon as this was said, a few of the strategists' expressions changed slightly. Mountain elves were legendary evil creatures in the world of general corpses. In layman's terms, they were evil spirits in the mountains. They had once caused a riot in the world of general corpses. It was a riot of a very large scale. It lasted for more than 20 years. More than 300 million people participated in the rebellion. After the Corpse King quelled the riot, he ordered several generals to lead millions of soldiers and escort the tens of millions of surrendered general corpses into the 10,000 Poisons Ridge in the forest. It was said that after the generals outside the 10,000 Poisons Ridge drove the general corpses in, they heard screams in the 10,000 Poisons Ridge for 7 days and 7 nights. The generals and soldiers felt their scalps go numb. They didn't sleep for 7 days and 7 nights. After 7 days and 7 nights, the 10,000 Poisons Ridge suddenly fell into a dead silence. There was no more sound. The general corpses waited for 2 more days. Seeing that no rebels escaped, they left the 10,000 Poisons Ridge. But after they returned, all the generals died within 7 days. All of the more than 1 million soldiers died within 7 days. Not only them, but even their families and friends who came into contact with them during these 7 days, including the king at the time, all died. Even 3 of the new kings had died in a row. Whoever becomes king dies. In the past, it was the brothers and fathers who fought to be the king. In order to become the king, they didn't hesitate to kill their father and brothers. But at that time, none of the king's sons wanted to be king. For the sake of the king, they did not hesitate to run away from home. They even dressed up as beggars and escaped from the city. At that time, the entire General Corpse kingdom was in a state of panic. Later on, he heard from a necromancer that the 10 million corpses that had died in the myriad Poisons Ridge had transformed into mountain elves to cause trouble. After more than 20 days, no more people died suddenly. But even so, no one was willing to be king. The current king was only a 5-year-old child at that time. In his confusion, he was helped up to the throne by a group of officials. Of course, this was something that happened nearly 1,000 years ago. It was said that after the king came of age, he destroyed all the history books about this incident. Nowadays, people only pass down such stories through word of mouth. As for whether the story was true or not, only the king would know. The princess frowned. If it really was a mandrill, then they would be in big trouble. Of course, there were also strategists who objected. No one knows whether the mandrill story is true or not. And according to my years of research, it's a superstition. Because there's no evidence to prove what happened back then. A strategist shook his head. It's better to believe it than not. As the saying goes, there's no smoke without fire. Even if what happened back then wasn't as horrifying and tragic as the legends say, it must have happened. Some strategists believed that this matter was true, while others thought that it was false. The two sides quarreled. In the end, the princess spoke. Regardless of whether this is true or not, the destruction of so many towns has already exceeded the scope of our abilities. We must report to the governor as soon as possible. Immediately send out a messenger to report this matter to the prefecture city. Yes, I'll do it right away. One of the strategists said and quickly retreated. However, just as he walked out of the meeting hall, suddenly, something landed on his shoulder. He turned his head and saw that it was a corpse general ant that was not even the size of his finger. He did not care at all. In the Flaming Dawn continent, corpse general ants were very common. They were just like ants on Earth. However, there were not many corpse general ants, and they did not cause much harm. Therefore, he did not care at all. The strategist was about to stretch out his finger and crush the corpse general ant to death. But at this moment, the corpse general ant suddenly jumped up and bit the back of the strategist's hand. Immediately, a bloody wound that was so deep that bone could be seen appeared on the back of the strategist's hand. Looking at the ghastly white bone in the wound, the strategist was shocked. But before he could react, a second, a third, a 10th, hundreds of corpse general ants landed on his head. Hiss, 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 a single bite from each corpse commander ant would leave behind hundreds of bloody wounds. Ah, the strategist let out a scream. He wanted to run and call for help. But soon, he was horrified to find that he could not move. Not to mention his feet, he could not even move his fingers, or even his eyes. Soon, in just 10 seconds, half of him was bitten. In the meeting hall, the strategists heard the scream and rushed out one by one. At this moment, the scene they saw made them all suck in a breath of cold air. The strategist who had just walked out was still standing, but the upper half of his body had been bitten into bones. The lower half of his body was still being bitten. It was not just this strategist. In the sky, countless black corpse general ants were like black rain, rapidly falling down. After landing, they quickly surrounded the corpse general ants. Those corpse general ants were also bitten into bones. Even the bones had been gnawed clean. At this moment, the strategists and the princess finally understood. These were not mandrill, but corpse general ants. Corpse general ants fell from the sky. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of corpse general ants. Resist! Resist! The princess gave a powerless order. But at this moment, all the corpse general ants could not even take care of themselves. How could they resist? Amidst her terror, the princess would occasionally raise her head to take a look. She would suddenly feel extremely terrified. This was because he seemed to have seen a figure in the gaps between the densely packed corpse general ants that were falling down. That figure was not a corpse general. It was a human. No, how was this possible? Although there were some humans in the corpse general world who were kept in captivity for corpse general research, there were definitely no free humans. Chapter 539. It was not just the commandery princess. When the other corpse generals saw the human figure in the sky, an inexplicable panic rose in their hearts. How could a human who was supposed to be kept in captivity suddenly appear here? Moreover, this human had condensed energy wings behind his back and was floating in the sky. In the knowledge of these corpse generals, it seemed that only the corpse ancestor could float in the sky. Could it be that this human had strength comparable to the corpse ancestor? With this thought, all the corpse generals felt an inexplicable panic. They wanted to hide, they wanted to fight back. But they found that their bodies could not move at all. This made them even more terrified. Fortunately, the commandery princess found that she could occasionally open her mouth. Because the number of corpse generals was too large, reaching 400,000, and their strength was not low. They had reached the level of super-evolved corpse generals. Therefore, Immortal's dragons will could not keep all the corpse generals motionless at all times. The commandery princess found that she could still open her mouth and shout. She seemed to be grasping at the last life-saving straw. She opened her mouth and let out a heart-wrenching cry like a pig being slaughtered. Quickly go and invite the corpse ancestor of the western heaven. This voice, accompanied by the transmission of energy, spread to a radius of hundreds of kilometers. Just as this voice fell, a figure suddenly appeared in the air 500 meters in front of Immortal without warning. This figure was not the size of a corpse general. It was the size of an ordinary human. It seemed that many creatures eventually developed a human form. After all, if the body was too big, it was inconvenient to do many things. This corpse general ancestor's head was completely bald. There was not a single hair on his head. His scalp was wrinkled. His face was wrinkled. His arms and bare feet were all wrinkled. In short, there was not a single part of his body that was not wrinkled. If someone with OCD saw this, they would probably want to flatten him with an electric iron. His gaze only swept across the miserable situation below. The next moment, his body began to change. With a series of muffled cracking sounds, the skin on his chest and back began to harden quickly. In the end, it became as hard as a rock. 2 bone blades grew out of his arms. These 2 bones extended from the outside of his arms with a certain curve. They were about 2 feet long. It was both offensive and defensive. Furthermore, those corpse ancestors had all changed their fighting style. It was no longer a long-distance energy competition. He no longer released any big moves. Instead, it leaned more towards close-range combat. However, this kind of close-range combat was fatal. It was far more dangerous than long-range combat. In a long-distance battle, the opponent's energy attacks were basically all AoE attacks. It looked very powerful, but the attack was scattered. If your body was tough enough, you might even be able to withstand it with your body. But in close combat, no matter how hard your body was, you would be killed almost instantly. When Wang Yi saw that corpse ancestor had come forward without saying a word, he was about to attack. It seemed like he was also a ruthless person. Mo Shi did not use the dragon salure again. The body of the dragon salure was relatively large, and it was more suitable for long-range attacks. With a thought, he took out a saber. The blade was 2 feet long. Its entire body was blood red. It was so red that it seemed like it could drip blood. From the tip of the blade to the hilt, it formed a small S-shaped streamline. The tip of the blade was extremely sharp. There was an S-shaped hollow line on the blade, which extended from the tip of the blade all the way to the hilt. On the back of the blade, there were more than 10 serrations. On the whole, it looked very scientific and mysterious. This was the profound Bing demon-slaying blade that Mo Shi had not used for a long time. The profound Bing demon-slaying blade and bloodthirsty corpse-slaying blade had some similar functions. They could both absorb the blood of infected creatures and transform it into a strong acid. However, there was an additional ice seal function. When it hit anything, it could instantly release a large amount of cold air. It would cause an ice seal effect. Even if it encountered a powerful creature, it could not be directly frozen, but it could also cause a slowing effect. This way, it would corrode from the inside and freeze from the outside. It made it impossible for the enemy to guard against it. Most importantly, the general corpse's self-healing ability was extremely strong, but if it was cut by the profound Bing demon-slaying blade, it would definitely be very interesting. Moreover, this profound Bing demon-slaying blade had a growth attribute. It would absorb Mo Shi's evolution points and slowly grow. Mo Shi had not used it for a long time. It absorbed 100 evolution points every day to grow. The current profound Bing demon-slaying blade had already grown to an unknown extent. That corpse ancestor's figure flashed and already arrived in front of Mo Shi. With a thought from Mo Shi, Long Wei was instantly released. A trace of fear suddenly appeared in corpse ancestor's heart. Although his level was much higher than Mo Shi, Long Wei that Mo Shi had nurtured for many years would still cause a certain amount of disturbance to him. Mo Shi took advantage of this trace of fear in his heart and quickly slashed the profound Bing demon-slaying blade in his hand towards corpse ancestor. When corpse ancestor came back to his senses, the blood-red profound Bing demon-slaying blade was already above his head. He was alarmed and hurriedly teleported and disappeared. When he appeared again, he was already behind Mo Shi. However, Mo Shi had already predicted his position. He also teleported and disappeared without a trace. When corpse ancestor appeared, he discovered that Mo Shi had suddenly disappeared and could not help but be slightly stunned. Right at this moment, a blood-red blade had already pierced towards his back. Ding! A soft sound rang out. The tip of the blade pierced the hardened skin on Corpse Ancestor's back. However, it was unable to pierce in at all. Mo Shi was secretly alarmed. One must know that the profound Bing demon-slaying blade was extremely sharp and could cut through iron like mud. However, it was unable to pierce through Corpse Ancestor's hardened skin. This guy's defense was truly abnormal. However, it was fortunate that only the skin on his chest and back was hardened. Other than that, the rest of his skin was still normal. After Corpse Ancestor's body was pierced, he sneered. Just as he was about to turn around and attack Mo Shi. However, right at this moment, Kacha, the surface of his body was instantly covered with a thick layer of ice. This caused Corpse Ancestor's speed to slow down slightly. Mo Shi took this opportunity and slashed towards the back of Corpse Ancestor's head. Although Corpse Ancestor did not manage to turn around, with his many years of battle experience, he instantly raised the bone blade on his right arm. Ding! Mo Shi's profound Bing demon-slaying blade directly struck the bone blade. At the same time, Corpse Ancestor had already turned around and pierced towards Mo Shi's chest with his other bone blade. However, right at this moment, he was once again sealed by a thick layer of ice. One must know that the profound Bing demon-slaying blade was extremely abnormal in one aspect: no matter what it struck, it would instantly release a large amount of cold air and freeze that object. Therefore, no matter if it was Corpse Ancestor's body or weapon, as long as it came into contact with the profound Bing demon-slaying blade, it would instantly be sealed by a thick layer of ice. With his strength, this 1-foot layer of ice could not completely freeze him and could only slow him down a little. However, in a battle between experts, as long as this speed was slowed down, it would be extremely dangerous. Chapter 540. Mo Shi's mystic ice devil-slaying blade was unable to penetrate the Western Heaven Corpse Ancestor's chest and back. The Western Heaven Corpse Ancestor's reaction was extremely fast, and he was always able to block Mo Shi's attack with his bone blade. But there was one thing that annoyed the Western Heaven Corpse Ancestor. Every time Mo Shi's mystic ice devil-slaying blade attacked, as long as it touched his body or weapon, it would release a large amount of cold air, instantly forming more than a foot of ice around his body. Although with his strength, this kind of cold ice could not cause him any harm at all. But there was one thing: this cold ice would slightly slow his speed. Of course, an ordinary person would not be able to see any stagnation in his speed. However, when he was fighting against an expert like Mo Shi, the slightest delay in his speed was enough to put him in a dangerous situation. His neck, eyes, crotch, and other vital points had been almost pierced by Mo Shi's blade many times. Ding! The bone blade once again clashed with the mystic ice devil-slaying blade. Crack! His whole body was once again sealed in ice. His energy shook slightly, shattering the ice seal. But at the same time, Mo Shi's blade had once again arrived in front of his neck. The Corpse Ancestor was a little anxious. He wanted to escape, but there was no way to use teleportation. One must know that teleportation was not something that could be used immediately when one wanted to. Any skill in this world had a time before it could be used. The only difference was the length of the time before it could be used. Although the time before teleportation was very short, it was still there after all. Wang Yi did not give the Corpse Ancestor any chance to teleport at all. He could not fight, nor could he escape. How could this not make him anxious? Ding! Once again, Mo Shi's mystic ice devil-slaying blade clashed with the Corpse Ancestor's bone blade. Crack! The Corpse Ancestor was once again sealed in ice. The energy in his whole body shook, shattering the ice seal. Then he subconsciously protected his eyes with the blade in his left hand and his neck with the blade in his right hand. At the same time, he paid attention to his crotch to prevent Mo Shi's sneak attack. But at this moment, Mo Shi's mystic ice devil-slaying blade did not attack his vital points. Instead, it slashed at the inside of the corpse ancestor's left leg from an extremely tricky angle. This had greatly exceeded corpse ancestor's expectations. He had been guarding his vitals all along, but who would have thought that this fellow would suddenly attack his thigh? Caught off guard, Mo-Shi's knife slashed the inside of his thigh. Chi, with a light sound, a bloody wound was finally made there. After training with the corpse ancestor, Mo-Shi had long since mastered a set of combat techniques. Perhaps he wasn't as strong as corpse ancestor in a face-to-face battle, but he was very scheming. Actually, as long as his profound ice devil-slaying blade was able to cut open the corpse ancestor's body, it would be able to cause enormous harm to him. However, Mo-Shi kept attacking his vital points, causing him to mistakenly think that the mysterious ice devil-slaying blade was just an ordinary blade that had to hit his vital points to cause great damage to him. He had never expected that Mo-Shi would slash at the inside of his thigh. However, corpse ancestor didn't panic. General corpses had extremely powerful self-healing abilities, and as the corpse ancestor, his self-healing abilities were far superior to ordinary general corpses. Therefore, even if his leg was scratched to the point where the bone was visible, it would heal in just 10 seconds. Crack, just as he was thinking this, his entire body was sealed in ice again. Just like before, he shattered the layer of ice with a jolt of energy. Chi, Mo-Shi's knife cut his arm again. Crack, frozen. Chi, scratched. And so it went back and forth. In next to no time, besides his chest and back, practically every part of corpse ancestor's body was covered in injuries. And at this moment, he finally discovered a horrifying fact. Those wounds hadn't healed. Not only had they not healed, but they seemed to be constantly corroding inside. Around the rotten wound, mucus bubbled like boiling water and flowed out continuously. At the same time, a burst of thick smoke rose, emitting an unpleasant stench. Half a minute later, his skin and flesh had been corroded through. The white bones inside were exposed. Soon, even the white bones had been corroded, turning into unpleasant mucus that fell to the ground. Corpse ancestor of the Western Heaven watched helplessly as his left arm rapidly disappeared, and then his right arm disappeared. Thump, his left leg disappeared, and then his right leg disappeared. His entire body fell from the sky and fell to the ground. No, he let out the last and most tragic scream of his life. His head fell heavily to the ground. Finally, when more than half of his head had been corroded, his consciousness completely disappeared. In the end, his entire body, including that torso with a tortoise shell, had turned into black mucus. Corpse ancestor was finally dead. The battle between Mo-Shi and corpse ancestor looked very dangerous. But in reality, it had only lasted for a short 2 minutes. At this moment, Mo-Shi looked at the corpse generals below. Those corpse generals were also looking at Mo-Shi in the sky. Disbelief and terror appeared in their eyes. Corpse ancestor is dead. He killed corpse ancestor. How could corpse ancestor die? No, impossible, absolutely impossible. In the culture of the corpse generals, as long as one cultivated to corpse ancestor's level, it was equivalent to possessing endless life. Moreover, corpse ancestor's self-healing ability was extremely strong, and he was basically unkillable. But now, corpse ancestor had died in front of them. This completely shattered their previous understanding. And the most shocking and unbelievable thing was that the one who killed corpse ancestor was a mere human. One had to know that humans were nothing more than ants to them. They were ants that could be casually stomped to death. But now, corpse ancestor of the Western Heaven had been killed by such an ant. This was simply unbelievable, and they did not dare to believe it. Even though the truth was right in front of them. But the truth would not change with corpse ancestor's will. Just because you don't believe it, doesn't mean it didn't happen. Ha ha. Half an hour later, these 400,000 corpse generals were completely devoured by Mo-Shi's subordinates. At the same time, the system's notification sounded in his mind. Kill points have exceeded 10 trillion. You can advance. Advance now? Mo Shi was overjoyed. He could finally advance again. He replied without hesitation. Advance. 5 minutes later, the system's notification sounded again. Advance successful. Name, Mo Shi, Level 7 Super Evolved Dragon, Level 7 Great Desolate Master, Level 10 Long Nian Shi, Skills. Click to expand. Mo Shi clenched his fists, feeling the surging energy in his body as if he had eaten a small blue pill. He had the urge to immediately find someone to fight. He had already advanced to level 7. Would level 8 be far away? The truth was, it was indeed very far away. Because advancing to level 8 required 100 trillion kill points. In other words, he had to kill 10 billion corpse generals before he could advance again. And in the largest corpse general city, there were only 10 million corpse general. There were only 4 such large cities in the corpse general world. The remaining cities had at most 1 million corpse general. How long would he have to kill? Sigh, the bitter days were about to begin again. Chapter 541. After advancing to the 7th rank, Mo Shi brought the corpse general ants and left Naten city. He continued to head to the next city. Currently, a town with 10,000 corpse general ants was no longer enough to satisfy his appetite. He needed a county like Naten city with a few 100,000 corpse general ants. Of course, there weren't many such counties. Mo Shi spent half a month and only massacred 20 such counties, obtaining 1,000 trillion kill points. He had only completed 1% of it. Of course, Mo Shi had originally planned to go to those super cities with tens of millions of corpse general ants. However, such super cities would definitely have extremely strong defenses. Moreover, there might be an existence even stronger than the corpse ancestor. With his current strength, he would still need some time to deal with the corpse ancestor without using the demon-suppressing orb. Moreover, he would need to deal with an existence even stronger than the corpse ancestor. Therefore, it was more practical to fight on the outskirts like this. Thus, one county after another was destroyed. Even a county with 1 million people was massacred. Mo Shi's army of corpse general ants continued to grow as the massacre continued. 1,000,000, 1,200,000, 1,500,000. The number of corpse general ants was rapidly approaching 2 million. There was a limit to the development of the corpse general ants, and that was that a group of corpse general ants could only have one ant queen. No matter how high the rank of an ant queen was, or how much food it had, it could only produce 10,000 corpse general ants per day. Therefore, the speed of development wasn't too exaggerated. Mo Shi had once tried to bring these corpse general ants into Earth space, instantly producing hundreds of millions of corpse general ants, and then bring them out of Earth space. However, just as he brought them out of Earth space, the corpse general ants that he created out of thin air in Earth space instantly disappeared. This made Mo Shi feel somewhat helpless. What he did in Earth space wouldn't affect the real world. As for why he killed that huge dragon in Earth space, that huge dragon had died in the real world. In fact, it wasn't that the huge dragon had died in the real world, but that the huge dragon had been imprisoned in Earth space forever. If Mo Shi brought that huge dragon's corpse out of Earth space, that huge dragon would instantly come back to life. Unfortunately, this was impossible. Not to mention that the dragon's corpse had already exploded into fireworks. Even if it did exist, he couldn't bring it out of Earth space. As for the others, it was even more impossible. No matter how powerful a space creature was, it could only enter Earth space. It couldn't affect anything in Earth space. It was even more impossible to take the giant dragon away from Earth. Otherwise, the concept that Mo Shi was the god of Earth space would become a false proposition. While Mo was leading his ant soldiers and ant generals to massacre those county cities, the news of this incident had already spread out. No matter how underdeveloped the communications of the General Corps world were, after such a long time, this news had already reached the ears of the various governors. These governors were much more rational than the princesses. They didn't think that a single city would be able to handle a guy who could slaughter so many prefectures and cities. Even if they had a few corpse ancestors in their prefecture city, they didn't think they could withstand it. Therefore, these governors all reported this matter to the king. Spartacus. This was the main city of the General Corps world. It was also the city where the zombie king resided. In the entire city, there were 33 million general corpses. Every general corpse was a super-evolved general corpse. The most powerful thing was that there were more than 100 corpse ancestors guarding Spartacus. One had to know that in the general corpse world, corpse ancestors were the ceiling of combat strength. One corpse ancestor was enough to make the general corpses worship him, not to mention that there were more than 100 of them here. The general corpse king was named Spartacus. That's right, this main city was named after him. In the general corpse world, the name of the main city would be changed the day the king took office. At this moment, in the palace of the main city. In the conference hall, there were as many as 30 governors standing in the center of the hall. On both sides of the hall, the General Corps civil officials and the General Corps warriors stood on the left and right. On the main seat of the hall sat the king of Spartacus. This king was still the wrinkled corpse ancestor. His grayish-white skin was covered with black bruise-like spots. He had a big bald head. In the eyes of humans, he looked ugly and funny. But in the eyes of the general corpses, the king of Spartacus was definitely a handsome man. He was worthy of being the most handsome man in the general corpse world. In the general corpse world, who knew how many female general corpses wanted to marry the king? But at this moment, this handsome man's expression was solemn as he listened to the reports of the governors below. Your Majesty, 30 cities in our stone state were massacred within a month. Your Majesty, 37 cities in our Balkan state were massacred within a month. Your Majesty, 42 cities in our Elko state were massacred within a month. But, this is nothing. The main city of the neighboring state of Quinton was massacred. Spartacus listened to these reports and scratched his wrinkled but shiny head. This was a sign that he was about to explode. When the governors who knew his character well saw this, they all hurriedly stopped talking. None of the governors dared to make a sound. After Spartacus scratched his head for a moment, he was on the verge of exploding. But as a wise king, he didn't immediately explode. Instead, he looked at the civil and military officials on the left and right and asked, "Do you have any ideas?" The civil officials hurriedly lowered their heads. Facing such a ferocious guy, even the defense of their main city of Spartacus was probably not safe. What could they do? Although those generals didn't lower their heads. But they didn't say a word. They had participated in countless battles in their lives, and there were also countless battles when they invaded other planets. But they had never encountered such a strong enemy. He could easily slaughter a city. Even the corpse ancestor couldn't stop him. This was truly a little too strong. Spartacus scratched his wrinkled but shiny head. He said, "No one can do anything. What's the use of having you?" Although those civil and military officials were complaining in their hearts, "If you, the king, can't do anything, what's the use of having you, the king?" But they didn't dare to show it on the surface. After a full 5 minutes, a person said, "Your Majesty, do you still remember the Black Emperor?" When this general corpse said this, the other general corpses all sucked in a breath of cold air. Black Emperor. This. Your Majesty, the Black Emperor must not be used. Your Majesty, the prophecy once said that the day the Black Emperor appeared was the day the world of corpses would be destroyed. You must not use the Black Emperor. Chapter 542. Hearing the two words Blood Emperor, the faces of all the ministers and officials changed. They were even more terrified than when they heard that hundreds of counties had been massacred. Your Majesty, we can't let the Blood Emperor come out. According to the prophecy, if the Blood Emperor comes out, the general corpse world will fall into eternal damnation. The ministers all tried to persuade him. One of the generals shook his head. That was in the past because we didn't have a way to deal with the Blood Emperor. But now, our general corpse world has been developing for more than 10,000 years and we have hundreds of ways to kill the Blood Emperor. After he exterminates those bandits, we can just kill the Blood Emperor. What is there to be eternal damnation about? The ministers all shook their heads. Your Majesty, we can't do that. 10,000 years ago, the Blood Emperor came out and massacred countless lives. At that time, the king paid a huge price to seal the Blood Emperor. If he comes out again, it will be hard to avoid another calamity. Your Majesty, although we have many ways to kill the Blood Emperor, it is only in theory and has never been tested. What if we can't kill the Blood Emperor? Although those bandits are despicable, the destruction they cause is far less than the Blood Emperor. Using the Blood Emperor to stop them is equivalent to exchanging a large injury for a small one. It is not worth it. On the main seat, the general corpse king Spartacus scratched his wrinkled but shiny head. He said, "Then what methods do you have to stop those bandits?" The ministers all shook their heads. They couldn't think of any other way to stop those bandits. Those bandits came and went without a trace. They couldn't even catch their shadows. Moreover, even if they could catch up with the bandits, how were they going to catch them? Those bandits were very powerful and could even massacre a city with a population of more than 1 million. Even if they sent an army of more than 1 million to deal with them, it wouldn't be effective. Not to mention, they didn't have that many soldiers now. The general corpse king had already sent an army of more than 10 million to the flame-beginning continent. It was impossible to summon them back in a short time. Spartacus saw that all the ministers were silent. He pondered for a long time and his gaze became firm. He said, "Let the Blood Emperor fight. But before he fights, we can give him the corpse-dissolving powder. We can also prepare many defensive measures. If he dares to act recklessly, there are hundreds of ways to kill him." When the corpse generals heard this, they could only respond. The king is wise. They knew that once the king had made up his mind, it would be useless for them to persuade him otherwise. Moreover, it was very likely that he would be greeted with a sentence, "Drag him out and chop him up." That afternoon, Spartacus went to the mountain behind the palace alone, to the underground prison 5 kilometers deep. This prison was extremely large, and the security measures were extremely tight. Not only was there a spatial seal to prevent teleportation, but there was also no air hole. The prison was surrounded by thick layers of rocks. There was only one general corpse in the entire prison, the Blood Emperor. Spartacus came to the prison door and ordered the soldiers guarding the door to open the observation hole on the door. He glanced inside. Then he said to the soldier, "Open the prison door." The soldier was slightly hesitant. "Your Majesty, this is too dangerous for you." "How about, cut the crap, open it." The soldier hurriedly nodded and said yes. Then, he opened the heavy prison door. There were 3 prison doors. The first 2 were made of 3-meter-thick concrete and steel. The third was made of the hardest metal in the kingdom of general corpses, Wuxia metal. The 3 large doors slowly opened, and King Spartacus entered the prison. This was a spherical prison with a diameter of over 10 meters. In this spherical prison, there were a total of 5 thick chains. These 5 chains chained the legs, hands, and neck of a humanoid creature. His head was facing down, his feet were facing up, and he was suspended in the air. Those chains that were as thick as a person's thigh were already covered in a thick layer of dust. Looking at this humanoid creature, he seemed to have once been a corpse ancestor. His wrinkled skin was proof of this. But at this moment, the clothes on the corpse ancestor's body had been reduced to tattered pieces of cloth. His exposed body looked as shriveled as a vacuum-packed chicken. The blood in his body seemed to have been sucked dry, leaving only a layer of wrinkled skin wrapped around his bones. His eyelids had sunk into his eye sockets. His body was also covered in a thick layer of dust. His nostrils had long been blocked by the dust. Spartacus's body slowly floated up, and he arrived in front of this wrinkled mummy. With a mysterious smile on his face, he moved closer to the mummy's ear and said, "It has been 10,000 years. The former Blood Emperor should have reappeared in the world." The mummy didn't have any reaction. Spartacus used his sharp fingertip to cut open his palm. He dripped a drop of black blood onto the mummy's body. A moment later, this drop of blood quickly merged with the mummy's body. Soon, the mummy's body started to squirm. Slowly, it turned from shriveled to full. About 2 minutes later, his body was completely full. He had already returned to the appearance of a normal corpse ancestor. But there was a hole in his throat. This hole seemed to have been made by a red-hot steel bar. And even with the Blood Emperor's self-healing ability, he was actually unable to heal that hole. His face didn't look like an ordinary corpse ancestor's. Instead, it seemed to be full of abscesses, and traces of yellow mucus were oozing out. It looked extremely disgusting. His eyes slowly opened, revealing his blood-red pupils. When he saw Spartacus, he revealed an extremely angry expression. From his throat that had a big hole, he let out a hoarse roar, hiss, hiss, hiss. He continued to struggle, causing the chains to clatter. Spartacus faintly smiled and said, "I like to see this kind of expression on your face when you want to kill me but can't do anything about it. But, this time, you have to listen to me." After he finished speaking, the angry expression in the Blood Emperor's eyes suddenly disappeared. Only a lifeless expression could be seen. Spartacus said, "Right now, there is a group of bandits causing chaos in my corpse ancestor's country. They have already massacred hundreds of cities. You have to find that group of bandits and kill them. Do you understand?" The lifeless expression in the Blood Emperor's eyes became sharp again. It was as if he had found his target in an instant. He nodded his head, and from his throat that had a big hole, he let out 2 sounds, hiss. When the corpse ancestor saw this scene, even though he was 300 meters tall, he still felt a chill in his heart. He had been guarding the Blood Emperor for more than 200 years. In front of him, the Blood Emperor was like a mummy. For the past 200 years, the Blood Emperor had never moved. He even felt that the Blood Emperor might have already died. But today, it was the first time he saw the Blood Emperor's true face. Chapter 543. Spartacus reached out and clapped his hands. Crash, 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 the thick chains around the Blood Emperor's neck, arms, and legs fell to the ground. Blood Emperor also fell to the bottom of the ball-shaped prison cell. Furthermore, he landed on his head first. He looked extremely miserable. After a long while, he finally moved. However, his movements were very strange. It was not his arms and legs that moved first. Instead, it was his head that was facing down that slowly turned. After a while, his head and back were standing at a 90-degree angle. This scene was extremely strange. Seeing this, the soldier at the door broke out in cold sweat. After that, the Blood Emperor's legs and arms also began to move. At the same time, he pushed his body up. At this moment, he did not look like a humanoid creature. Instead, he looked like a locust. After a while, he slowly stood up. Spartacus turned around and walked out of the cell. The Blood Emperor also followed behind him and walked out of the cell. The moment the Blood Emperor walked out of the cell, the soldier at the door felt an extremely dangerous feeling in his heart. It was as if his head would be separated from his body in the next moment. Even when he was facing the king, he had never felt such a feeling. The Blood Emperor was too terrifying. Half an hour later, Spartacus brought the Blood Emperor to the mountain behind the palace. He looked to the west and said, "He should be there. Go." The Blood Emperor looked to the west and let out a hoarse sound that made one's scalp numb. Hiss! After that, his body floated up and disappeared from the palace. Spartacus looked at the place where the Blood Emperor disappeared and a strange smile appeared on his face. The Blood Emperor teleported 100 kilometers away. This place was a field. The field that was planted by the zombie farmers was green and full of life. In the Blood Emperor's deep eye sockets, his blood-red eyes slowly closed. After a while, a small thing flew over from afar. He stretched out his right hand and caught it. It was a locust. Of course, the locust in the zombie world was much bigger than the one in the flaming origin continent. A locust was the size of an owl. It landed on the Blood Emperor's right hand and lowered its head. It extended a pair of sickle-like mouthparts and instantly cut the Blood Emperor's arm. After that, it started to bite the Blood Emperor's flesh. The Blood Emperor didn't seem to feel any pain as he lowered his head to look at the corpse General Locust. Very quickly, the corpse locusts ate the Blood Locust's entire forearm until only the bones were left. At the same time, the corpse locusts were also rapidly transforming. Its body turned from brown to red. First the legs, then the tail, the abdomen, and finally the torso. Finally, it was the head. Its entire body had turned blood red. There was a bloodthirsty look in his small eyes. The Blood Emperor's right arm, which only had traces of blood and bones left, lightly waved. The blood-red corpse General Locust flapped its wings and flew towards the nearby corpse General Farmer's courtyard. Not long after, several screams were heard. In just 10 minutes, a blood-red corpse locust flew out with more than 10 blood-red locusts. One day later, the swarm of blood-red corpse General Locusts had grown to more than 100. 2 days later, there were over 1,000 of them. 3 days, 10,000. 4 days, 100,000. The number of corpse locusts increased exponentially. They weren't like the corpse General Ants, which only had one queen and could give birth to shadow queens. All of the corpse General Locusts were hermaphrodites. Although a corpse General Locust could only give birth once in its life, every single one of them could give birth. This was quite terrifying. On the 10th day, the number of corpse General Locusts had reached a terrifying 10 billion. Moreover, it was still increasing at a rate of 10 times per day. At this moment, the blood-red corpse General Locust swarm was like a huge blood cloud. Wherever the corpse General Locust swarm passed, not even a blade of grass grew. The corpse General Locust swarm ate everything. When they passed through the grassland became bare. When they passed through the forest, all the trees in the forest were only 10 meters tall. Even the branches were eaten clean. These corpse General Locust swarm especially liked flesh and blood. When they passed through the forest, all the corpse General beasts nearby, whether they were super-evolved corpse General beasts or ordinary corpse General beasts, were eaten until only the bones were left. As for the cities they passed through, whether it was a small town with 10,000 corpse General Locust swarm or a big city with 1,000,000 corpse General Locust swarm, they were all massacred. It was just like when Immortal led the corpse ants to massacre these cities. The difference was that the corpse ants ate even the bones. And these corpse General Locust swarm were only left with white bones. This was the price to pay for releasing the Blood Emperor. The Blood Emperor was actually also called the Blood Locust. When it was called the Blood Emperor, it referred to the leader of the Blood Locust swarm, the corpse ancestor. When it was called the Blood Locust, it referred to the leader and the corpse General Locust swarm that was like a blood cloud that filled the sky. In the corpse General world, there was such an idiom, flying locust swarm. It meant that wherever the Blood Locust swarm passed, the people would be in a terrible situation. At this moment, the corpse General world would once again be filled with flying locust swarm. Spartacus City, in the palace. King Spartacus sat high on the throne carved from the skull of a corpse beast that was level 10 super-evolved. He listened to the continuous reports from below. Your Majesty, Kildare City was destroyed by the blood locust swarm. None of the 300,000 general corpses survived. Your Majesty, Sloane City was destroyed by the blood locust swarm. None of the 150,000 general corpses survived. Your Majesty, Ayun City was destroyed by the blood locust swarm. 1.03 million general corpses. None survived. The ministers all felt grief in their hearts. The speed at which the blood locust massacred the cities was much faster than the bandits. At this rate, in less than half a year, the entire corpse general world would be filled with blood locust. And the blood emperor would be undefeatable. They did not understand why His Majesty had to release the blood locust. Your Majesty, this, the ministers were all confused and felt heartache. And their Majesty's mouth had a strange arc that was hard to detect. Then, his expression became stern as he scanned the ministers below. His voice contained a trace of grief. If we don't release the blood emperor, who can stop those bandits? Those bandits are uncontrollable. We still haven't seen what they look like. And we can control the blood emperor, but we have to give him some benefits. Now, these destroyed cities are the price we have to pay. The general corpses in these cities will not die in vain. We will remember them forever. We will remember the sacrifice they made for the corpse general world. Although the ministers still felt heartache, they had nothing to say. If they did not release the blood emperor, they really had no other way. Furthermore, they had over 100 ways to kill the blood emperor. This was much better than letting them face those bandits that came and went without a trace. Seeing that the ministers did not say anything, Spartacus' mouth once again had an undetectable arc. Chapter 544. The general corpse world was experiencing two calamities. On one side, Mo was leading the corpse general ants to massacre the city. On the other side, the blood locusts were massacring the city. Of course, the damage caused by Mo was far less than the blood locusts. The corpse general ants only increased by 10,000 per day. The blood locusts increased by 10 times every day. 100 million today, 1 billion tomorrow, and 10 billion the day after tomorrow. Therefore, the damage caused by the blood locusts could increase by 10 times every day. In just 10 days, the initial damage could reach 10 billion times. On this day, Mo massacred a city. Looking at the kill points in his mind. 800 trillion. It was still far from 100 trillion. He couldn't help but worry. If it was like this, when would he be able to get 100 trillion kill points? Sigh, as long as the giant dragon hadn't arrived at the Flaming Land, he would continue to collect kill points here. He only hoped that the giant dragon would arrive a little later so that he could get more kill points. Thinking of this, his dragons will spread out to thousands of kilometers to find the next city. However, at this moment, Mo suddenly frowned slightly. He detected a red cloud floating in the sky 1,000 kilometers to the east. To be exact, this red cloud almost occupied half of the sky. It covered the sky and covered the sun. This red cloud was flying towards a city below. A moment later, this red cloud fell into the city below. Immediately, screams sounded everywhere. In less than 10 minutes, the city below was covered in blood. All the general corpses had turned into eerie white bones. This red cloud continued to take off and fly towards this side. Wherever it passed, it was a mess. The grass and leaves were all swallowed by this red cloud. A swarm of blood-red locusts? Mo frowned slightly. The number of this swarm of locusts was much larger than his ant colony. Then, he used the demon dragon's eye to detect the level of these blood-red locusts. Species, General Ant, Level 1 Super Evolved, Ability, Devour. Looking at another one, it was also a Level 1 Super Evolved Beast. Each blood-red locusts had reached Level 1 Super Evolved Beast. And he didn't know if there were 100 million, 1 billion, 10 billion, or 100 billion Super Evolved blood locusts here. Such a huge force was truly terrifying. One had to know that each blood locust was equivalent to a Grade 1 Grand Desolate Master. With such a large number of Grand Desolate Masters, no matter where they went, they would definitely be in existence that could destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth. At this moment, the swarm of blood locusts was flying towards Mo-Shur. Mo-Shur didn't know if it was a coincidence or if they were here for him. However, he already had an idea. Thus, he led the corpse commander ants towards the blood locusts. On the third day, Mo-Shur finally saw the blood locust swarm in the distance. At this moment, the size of the blood locust swarm seemed to be 1,000 times larger than it was 3 days ago. F***CKU. Mo-Shur couldn't help but curse. The production capacity of this blood locust swarm was too abnormal. If his corpse general ants had such an abnormal production rate, he wouldn't have to work so hard. Now that he was close enough, Mo-Shur carefully probed again. He noticed that there was a corpse ancestor within the swarm of blood locusts. Although this corpse ancestor seemed to be in an invisible state, that's right, he seemed to be able to turn invisible. This was the first creature Mo-Shur had encountered that could turn invisible. When he was invisible, Mo-Shur couldn't detect his existence at all. Even his dragon consciousness couldn't detect him. He would only reveal a trace of his aura occasionally. Mo-Shur guessed that there was a corpse ancestor hidden within the blood locust swarm based on this trace of aura. He was secretly on guard, and a layer of black dragon scales appeared on the surface of his body. This was much safer. At this moment, when the blood locust swarm saw the huge number of corpse general ants, they immediately let out squeaking sounds in excitement. It was unknown whether there were 10 billion, 100 billion, or 1 trillion blood locust. When they squeaked at the same time, the sound was like thunder. The blood cloud began to envelop the corpse general ants. Mo-Shur looked at the sky full of blood locust and felt his scalp go numb. He couldn't help but shake his head. After setting up a virtual sentry tower outside, he returned to Earth. It was safer to hide in Earth. Those blood locusts were very excited, very excited. They quickly pounced on the corpse general ants. It was like a huge blood cloud that swallowed the millions of corpse general ants in an instant. Mo-Shur shook his head slightly. The corpse general ants that he had nurtured for so long were gone just like that. However, as the saying goes, a general success is built on thousands of bones. This is a sacrifice that you must make. 2 million corpse general ants were completely enveloped by the huge blood cloud. It looked like a huge blood ball with a radius of 5 kilometers. Only then did Mo-Shur appear 500 meters above the blood ball with a thought. In his right hand, he was already holding a crystal-clear ball. The corpse general ants below had been completely devoured in an extremely short period of time. The blood locust swarm was looking for their next target. Mo-Shur's sudden appearance made them excited again. The huge blood ball was about to expand and pounce on Mo-Shur. However, Mo-Shur didn't wait for the blood ball to expand. He had already let go of the crystal ball in his hand. The crystal ball fell rapidly. When the blood locust saw the rapidly falling thing, they all pounced on it. No matter what it was, they had to try to bite it first. However, just as they were about to touch the crystal ball, a dazzling chaotic light instantly burst out from the crystal ball. The entire world seemed to be swallowed by this chaotic light. They couldn't see the sky or the earth. They couldn't see Mo-Shur or the blood locust. The Blood Emperor, who had been hiding in the dark, had a look of surprise in his eyes. What was going on? Even though he had lived for tens of thousands of years, he had never seen such a situation. After a full 5 minutes, the chaotic light disappeared. The entire world was quiet. Those blood locusts that made one's scalp numb earlier had disappeared. Not a single one was left. As for the corpse general ants, they had long been devoured by the blood locust. Not a single one was left. When the Blood Emperor, who was hiding in the dark, saw this scene, his blood-red eyes were like blood-red light bulbs. What was going on? This, impossible. Absolutely impossible. His huge blood locust swarm was destroyed by this guy's pearl? This didn't make any sense at all. However, he didn't know that anything that didn't make sense could happen to Mo Shi. At this moment, Mo Shi's mind was filled with killing points. Obtained killing points plus 100 billion, obtained killing points plus 100 billion, obtained killing points plus 100 billion, he didn't know how many plus 100 billions appeared. There were so many that Mo Shi was numb. After a while, the killing points finally stopped. Chapter 545. The notifications in Mo Shi's mind stopped. But then, another voice rang out. You can level up. Do you want to level up now? Mo Shi was overjoyed. He thought that it would take a long time for him to level up again. He didn't expect to level up so suddenly. He wasn't mentally prepared at all. But since he could level up, Mo Shi didn't hesitate. He didn't pay attention to his family member who was appearing and disappearing. Instead, with a thought, he returned to Earth. The voice in his mind said, level up. The system's voice came frowny face. This level up will take 5 minutes. Mo Shi didn't stop. With a thought, he accelerated time. Almost instantly, a notification came in his mind. Frowny face, level up successful. The remaining kill points can be leveled up again. Do you want to level up now? Mo Shi showed an unexpected smile. Level up. After a moment. Level up successful. The remaining kill points can be leveled up again. Do you want to level up now? Mo Shi was even more delighted this time. He still chose to level up again. Soon, the system's voice came again. Level up successful. This time, it said, level up successful, instead of, level up successful. And after that, there was no more notification that there were extra kill points to level up again. Mo Shi was really too excited. In just a few seconds, he had leveled up several times. As for which level, he couldn't remember clearly. He could only look at his attribute interface. Name, Mo Shi, level 1 Super Evolved Dragon, level 10 Long Nian Shi, ability. Click to expand, Super Evolved. Mo Shi was so surprised that he couldn't speak clearly. Previously, he was only a level 7 Super Evolved Dragon. In just a few seconds, he passed level 8, level 9, and level 10. In the end, he became a level 1 Super Evolved Dragon. This really made him pleasantly surprised. In addition to being surprised, he directly transformed into a dragon. At this time, his body had reached a length of 10,000 meters. It could definitely be described as covering the sky and the sun. Just his head alone was almost the size of a building. In the distance, Happy, Emma, and her son saw the huge creature that suddenly appeared in the sky. Although they knew that this was the dragon that Mo Shi had transformed into, they still couldn't help but feel a wave of panic in their hearts. After all, this guy was simply too big. Imagine if a 10-kilometer-long monster suddenly appeared in front of you. Would you be afraid? Not only had Mo Shi grown longer, but the scales on his body had also become harder. At this moment, if he stood still and allowed an evolved dragon to attack him, he would be unscathed. Furthermore, his tail had also changed. At the end of his tail, a bluish-white electric current would occasionally flow out. Although he had been able to release electricity in the past. However, the intensity of the current wasn't very high. This time, however, the intensity of the current was extremely high. He casually tried using the electric current to blast a mountain below him. Rumble, the mountain peak, which was hundreds of meters tall, collapsed under the bombardment of the electric current. Huge rocks flew in all directions. It was just like the scene when Monkey King jumped out from under the Five Elements mountain. This was because after Immortal evolved this time, the dragon vein in his body had mutated and possessed the lightning attribute. At this moment, Immortal could spit fire, ice, and also possess the true lightning attribute. A triple attribute dragon. Even in the world of the great dragons, it could be said to be one of a kind. He flew a few more laps in the sky. Immortal found that his flying speed had also become much faster. Not only that. When he flew, when he applied lightning to his entire body, his speed was even faster. The speed of the lightning during thunder was the same as the speed of Immortal's flying speed after applying the lightning. This kind of flying speed was almost equivalent to the speed of teleportation. In the future, when he really came to the world of the great dragons, if teleportation was restricted at certain times, then Immortal could still apply lightning to increase his speed. Feeling the surging power of lightning in his body, Immortal couldn't help but let out a long roar. Roar, the dragon roar that was filled with domineering, mysterious, and majestic reverberated between heaven and earth. At this moment, with the addition of the three attributes and the dragon salure, Immortal felt that it wouldn't be a problem for him to challenge a super-evolved dragon that was a few levels higher. The three people on the ground were shocked when they heard this dragon roar. Fortunately, they knew that this dragon was transformed by Immortal. Otherwise, they would have been scared to death. Immortal once again circled around in the air at lightning speed. When he added lightning to fly, the three people below couldn't see his figure at all. They could only see a blue and white lightning circling in the sky. It wasn't until more than 10 minutes later that Immortal had enough and stopped. He transformed back into his human form. The three people on the ground heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Immortal transform into his human form. Immortal said in his mind, "System, special event check-in." He used the corpse ants to attract the blood locusts over and kept them within a certain range. Then, he used the demon-suppressing orb to capture them all in one fell swoop. This was naturally a special event. The system's voice replied instantly, frowny face, sign-in successful. Sign-in event, slaughter of the blood locusts, sign-in reward, blood locusts 1, Immortal focused his mind on the blood locusts in the system backpack. It looked like a locust. It looked no different from the locusts on Earth. However, it was a little bigger and its entire body was blood red. Blood locusts have a strong reproductive ability. After using it, wherever it passes, not a single blade of grass will grow. The host can communicate with the blood locusts through his mind. Immortal was overjoyed. He immediately moved his mind and came to the outside world. The Blood Emperor, who was hiding in the dark, was furious after losing this large number of blood locusts. However, he didn't plan to fight Immortal head-on. After losing the blood locusts, as long as he escaped, it wouldn't be long before he formed an army of blood locusts again. At this moment, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He saw that humans suddenly appear in the air like a ghost. And a blood locusts actually appeared in his hand. The Blood Emperor was a little surprised. Why didn't the blood locusts attack this human when they saw him? Surprised, he planned to wait for a while before escaping. At this moment, Immortal waved his hand. The blood locusts flew towards the forest below. A moment later, a small tree was gnawed clean. Then, a total of 11 blood locusts flew up. They flew to the next tree. Seeing this, the Blood Emperor frowned. He moved his mind, wanting to control those blood locusts. But he soon realized that he couldn't control those blood locusts at all. What's going on? Aren't these blood locusts mine? When did they betray me? Chapter 546. At this moment, the Blood Emperor's heart is filled with shock and fear. Ever since he obtained the ability to control the blood locusts, there has never been a case of the blood locusts betraying him. This fellow is truly strange. Thinking of this, his figure flashed and instantly disappeared. Immortal did not chase after him. This fellow will be finished sooner or later. Let him off for now. For Immortal, the most important thing now is to quickly develop these blood locusts. Thus, he moved his mind. The 11 blood locusts continue to gnaw on the grass and trees below. However, the newly born blood locusts need to wait until the next day to give birth. Thus, Immortal can only suppress his temper and wait. On the second day, the 10 blood locusts are able to give birth. Each blood locusts gives birth to 10 blood locusts. Immortal's blood locusts instantly reach 111 blood locusts. On the third day, the newly grown blood locusts give birth to 10 blood locusts. 11 blood locusts. On the fourth day, 10,000 blood locusts. On the fifth day, 100,000 blood locusts. On the sixth day, 1,000,000 blood locusts. In just 10 days, the blood locusts have reached 10 billion blood locusts. This is much more powerful than the corpse general ants. These 10 billion corpse general ants are like a large red cloud that unceasingly passes over the ground. This time, Immortal's target is the main city of the corpse general world, Spartacus City. Within Spartacus City, King Spartacus is sitting on his seat. The civil and military ministers below him are standing on both sides. However, in their eyes, there is a trace of fear. This is because the Blood Emperor is currently standing in the middle of the hall. In the corpse general world, the Blood Emperor is synonymous with death. Thus, even these ministers feel a chill in their hearts. However, the current Blood Emperor does not seem to have the same fierce killing intent as before. On the contrary, he is like a child that has made a mistake. He hangs his head and stands there without saying a word. Spartacus coldly snorts and curses, "Trash. You can't even kill a mere human. What use do I have for you?" The Blood Emperor still does not say a word. The ministers look at Spartacus in disbelief. When did the Blood Emperor become so obedient? According to the Blood Emperor's temperament, if the king dares to speak rudely, the entire corpse general world will be bathed in blood. But isn't the current Blood Emperor a bit too cowardly? After being scolded like this by the king, not only did he not dare to talk back, he even looked timid. This was far beyond the corpse general's expectations. Seeing that he couldn't get anything out of his scolding, Spartacus finally waved his hand. "You're just a piece of trash. Why don't you go and get a bunch of blood locusts?" The Blood Emperor hurriedly nodded his head, and from the hole in his throat, a hissing sound could be heard. Then, he turned around and left quickly. The ministers wanted to say something, but they didn't dare to. Get another group of blood locusts. Didn't that mean that many cities would be massacred? But since the king had given the order, none of them dared to say anything. With the king's temper, if he had already given an order and there was no one who dared to oppose, the king would basically only have one sentence: drag him out and behead him. After the Blood Emperor left, a minister said, "Your Majesty, that human is controlling a large swarm of blood locusts and is coming towards us. It is estimated that it will take at most 10 days to reach the palace. We need to prepare early." A general said, "What are you afraid of? There are over 100 corpse ancestors in the city of Spartacus. Why would we be afraid of a group of blood locusts?" That civil minister shook his head and said, "Of course the corpse ancestors aren't afraid of the blood locusts, but the 10 million people in the city are afraid." The others wanted to say something, but Spartacus waved his wrinkled hand and stopped the ministers. He said, "We aren't afraid of him coming. What we are afraid of is him appearing and disappearing unpredictably like before. Since he dares to come, isn't he falling into our trap? Could it be that 100 corpse ancestors can't kill a mere human? Hearing this, everyone thought for a moment and nodded slightly. It was indeed as the king said. With 100 corpse ancestors here, why would they be afraid of a human? Finally, when Immortal was getting closer and closer to the city of Spartacus, Spartacus gave the order, so the corpse ancestors are to move out and kill that human. Thus, over 100 general corpses suddenly floated out from all directions of the city of Spartacus. These general corpses were only the size of a human's head. Their skin was wrinkled. Over 100 corpse ancestors. This caused the general corpses in the city below to cry out in alarm. Corpse ancestor. That one too. Another one has appeared. 3 have appeared here. Oh my God. As ordinary civilians, the corpse ancestors only existed in their legends. Their ancestors had probably never seen the corpse ancestors before. They only knew that the corpse ancestors could float in the sky without using any energy. The corpse ancestors were only the size of a normal human. The corpse ancestors' skin was wrinkled. But now, not only did they see the corpse ancestors, but they also saw so many of them at once. This made them feel that it was a little unreal. With so many corpse ancestors, that human who dares to invade our general corpse's world will definitely be taken down. Is there a need to say? He will definitely be easily destroyed. That human is really too despicable. He controlled the blood locusts and massacred so many of our cities. Now, there are finally general corpses to restrain him. Since the first day the blood locusts appeared, countless general corpses' cities have been massacred. This human should be sent to hell. Listening to these general corpses, they were also blaming Immortal for the cities massacred by the Blood Emperor. Finally, Immortal saw the main city of the general corpses world in the distance, Spartacus City. He was slightly excited in his heart. He had come to the general corpses world for so long. Didn't he want to destroy the general corpses' main city? Once the main city was destroyed and the king died, the general corpses world would be leaderless. At that time, he would use the blood locusts to wash the entire general corpses world with blood. This was Immortal's plan. Immortal's blood-red wings flapped slightly as he floated in the air. Below was a large group of blood locusts. When the blood locusts landed on the ground, the entire ground seemed to have turned blood-red. It formed a blood locust's belt about 5 kilometers long and 10 kilometers wide. Immortal's gaze fell on the 100 corpse ancestors. 100 corpse ancestors? Then let's deal with them all at once. At this moment, those corpse ancestors were all staring at the human 500 meters away with sharp eyes. And in the city below, those general corpses roared, "Kill him! Kill him! Kill him!" In the palace, Spartacus raised his eyebrows slightly. He could feel that this human was very strong. But, this was just the beginning. Ever since he became this damned king, he hadn't played for a long time. Today, he would play to his heart's content. The sky was covered with dark clouds. A great battle was about to break out. Chapter 547. There was a poem, dark clouds pressed down on the city, threatening to destroy it. It was referring to the current Spartacus city, the main city of the entire General Corps world. Because the General Corps world's body was more than 600 times that of a human, the main city of the General Corps world had to be much larger than the large cities on Earth to accommodate more than 15 million General Corps world. The main city of the General Corps world was more than 10 times larger than the entire Wuxia on Earth. At this moment, the sky was covered in dark clouds. The rolling clouds were extremely low, as if they were going to press down on the entire main city of Spartacus. More than 100 corpse ancestors floated above the main city. They looked at the human with sharp gazes. On the ground, the General Corps generals roared one after another, "Kill him! Kill him! Kill him!" The General Corps generals in the distance couldn't see the situation here, but they heard the general corpse generals shouting, "Kill him." They also began to shout in unison. Thus, gradually, the 15 million general corpse generals in the main city all raised their right arms and shouted, "Kill him," in unison. General corpse generals were much louder than humans to begin with. The voice of 15 million general corpses, just how shocking was that? The sound wave pressed down on Immortal, as if it was going to crush Immortal. In the distant palace, Spartacus was standing high up, looking at the sky here. There was even a strange smile on his face. At this moment, a corpse ancestor suddenly moved. He disappeared in an instant, and when he reappeared, he was already behind Immortal. A bone blade condensed in his right arm and stabbed toward Immortal's back. However, Immortal didn't even turn his head. His left arm gently stretched backward, and his 5 fingers formed a claw. It was extremely fast, and it arrived first. He instantly grabbed the corpse ancestor's head. The next moment, crackle, blue-white lightning flashed on Immortal's left hand. The corpse ancestor's body was also instantly surrounded by lightning. The next moment, Immortal's left hand let go. The corpse ancestor's body fell from the sky. There was even a trail of black smoke behind him. Bang! After landing, there was no aura at all. It had already turned into a charred body. The corpse generals who were shouting, "Kill him," suddenly paused. When the corpse generals in the distance heard that they had stopped shouting, their voices abruptly stopped as well. Then, the voices of the distant general corpses disappeared. It was like a power outage. At first, there was darkness in the center, and then the darkness slowly radiated to the surroundings. The current Jianghu was in such a situation. For a moment, the entire kingdom of generals' corpses was dead silent. All of the corpse generals below looked at the human in the sky in disbelief. How was this possible? In their knowledge, the corpse ancestor was an extremely formidable existence. Immortality, indestructibility. Now that he was fighting with this human, he couldn't even withstand a single blow and fell to the ground. In the beginning, they still had a trace of hope, waiting for corpse ancestor to revive. After all, every single corpse progenitor possessed an extremely powerful regenerative ability. They wouldn't die even if their heads fell off. However, after waiting for over a minute, the corpse ancestor didn't come back to life. Black smoke was still rising from the corpse. He was already dead. Completely dead. All the general corpses widened their eyes. Corpse ancestor is dead? How was this possible? Corpse ancestor really is dead. And what they found most unbelievable was that he was actually killed in a single blow by this human. This, in the distant palace, the king was also shocked when he saw this scene. This was truly beyond his expectations. The ministers beside him said in horror, "Your Majesty, this," the king's shock quickly disappeared. Instead, he revealed a strange smile. Bullying the many with the few, interesting. At this moment, the corpse ancestors in the sky all had a slight change in expression. Soon, a total of 10 corpse ancestors instantly appeared around Immortal. The bone spurs, bone blades, and bone claws on their bodies were imbued with energy as they stabbed at Immortal. Ding, 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 ding. Their bone spurs, bone blades, and bone claws had all pierced Immortal. However, black scales had already appeared on the surface of Immortal's body. Although their sharp weapons were imbued with energy, they were unable to penetrate the surface of Immortal's body. At the same time, lightning coiled around Immortal's body. Zap, 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 the 10 Earth generals' bodies were instantly crawled up by the lightning. It was as if they were all in vibrating mode. Zap, 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 after a few seconds, the lightning on Immortal's body disappeared. And these corpse ancestors, who were considered godlike existences in the world of corpse generals, fell from the sky one after another. 10 long trails of black smoke were left behind. All the corpse generals were dumbfounded. Even 10 corpse generals were no match for this guy. How strong was this guy? At this moment, in the sky to the right, a large blood cloud flew over. Mo sure saw this large blood cloud and sneered. It was delivering food to his blood locusts. With a thought. On the ground, the large group of blood locusts flew towards the large blood cloud in the sky. From the size, it could be seen that Mo sure's large blood cloud was more than 10 times the size of the large blood cloud in the sky. In a moment, the large blood cloud in the sky was completely devoured. Only the Blood Emperor was left floating in the air. Mo sure shook his head slightly. This Blood Emperor was strong, but he seemed to be a little stupid. He clearly knew that he had less blood locusts than him, but he still insisted on delivering them. In the next moment, with a thought, he appeared in front of the Blood Emperor. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the Blood Emperor's neck. Previously, when Mo sure was only a rank 6 or 7 evolved giant dragon, he was able to fight evenly with corpse ancestors. Now that he had evolved into a super evolved giant dragon, if he were to meet a level 1 corpse ancestor, wouldn't it be a one-sided slaughter? Swish swish swish, dozens of snake-like lightning instantly climbed up the Blood Emperor's body. Then, Mo sure threw him to the side. The Blood Emperor flew far away. After flying for more than 10 kilometers, he drew a perfect arc. With a plop, he smashed into the palace and landed right in front of Spartacus. The faces of the officials were all pale. The Blood Emperor was killed. And in front of this human, the Blood Emperor was actually unable to withstand even one move. It must be known that in their knowledge, the Blood Emperor was synonymous with demon and fiend. But now, he was killed by a human in one move. How strong is this human? Very quickly, Mo sure gave them the answer. Facing the 100 over corpse ancestors, Mo sure was too lazy to kill them one by one. The sound of bones breaking came from his body. Kacha, kacha, his body was rapidly changing. The clothes on his body were torn apart. Black scales appeared all over his body. His hands turned into claws. His legs turned into claws. A long tail grew out from his back. His head turned into a sinister dragon head with barbs. Chapter 548. At this moment, Mo sure had transformed into a 10,000-meter-long dragon. 10,000 meters, what kind of concept was that? It was 10 kilometers long. In other words, even if a scale fell from his body, it would be able to crush dozens of ordinary people to death. A 10,000-meter-long dragon could almost be described as covering the sky and the sun. On the ground, the general corpses were all dumbfounded. This is a giant dragon. Heavens, there really is a giant dragon. In the world of general corpses, there had once been worship of giant dragons. Ever since Corpse Ancestor appeared, the general corpses gradually stopped worshipping giant dragons. However, in the distant rock paintings and the general corpses' oral legends, there was still the existence of giant dragons. However, it had been tens of thousands of years since a giant dragon had appeared. The general corpses treated giant dragons as just a legend. None of the general corpses felt that giant dragons really existed. However, now, a living giant dragon had appeared in front of them. How could they not be shocked? Mo sure's blood-red eyes were 100 meters in diameter. As he looked around, His Majesty was born. Many general corpses couldn't help but want to kneel on the ground and worship him. It was because his mountain-like body and his majestic gaze were too oppressive. The hearts of the 100-plus corpse ancestors that were still floating in the sky were all greatly shaken at this moment. There really was a giant dragon. What was even more terrifying was that this giant dragon seemed to be their enemy. It was over. In the distant palace, Spartacus looked at the giant dragon that occupied almost half of the sky. However, his eyes were full of spirit. At this moment, Mo-Shur's giant tail, which was almost 4,000 meters long, suddenly stretched out and pointed at a corpse ancestor in the sky. His entire body was flickering with blue-white lightning. The lightning seemed to have been compressed. At first, his entire body was flickering. Then, it quickly gathered at his tail. Finally, it gathered at the tip of his tail. At this moment, the tip of his tail looked like a shining ball of light. However, what was even more gorgeous than the ball of light was the ball of light condensed from lightning at the tip of Mo-Shur's tail, which had a diameter of 500 meters. Moreover, blue-white lightning was constantly spreading around this ball of lightning. It looked extremely unstable. In the next moment, this extremely unstable ball of lightning flew toward a corpse ancestor. The corpse ancestor hurriedly intended to flee when he saw this. However, how could the speed of the lightning ball be something that a corpse ancestor could avoid? Whoosh! The corpse ancestor was instantly struck by the lightning ball. His entire body was shrouded in a dazzling blue-white light. One could even see the shape of corpse ancestor's bones when he was electrocuted. In the next moment, the other corpse ancestors didn't even have the time to react. Above the lightning ball, countless blue-white lightning bolts instantly extended in all directions. In the blink of an eye, it enveloped over 100 corpse ancestors. Every corpse ancestor was covered in blue-white lightning. It was as if there were hundreds of little blue and white snakes crawling on it. Every corpse ancestor was charred on the outside and tender on the inside. After half a minute, the lightning finally disappeared. 100 corpse progenitors fell from the sky in unison, dragging thick black smoke behind them. It was as if hundreds of meteorites were falling to the ground. When they landed, crash! 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 Every single corpse ancestor had been reduced to charred pieces that covered the ground. All the general corpses were dumbfounded. The corpse ancestors were godlike existences in their eyes before. They were immortal, and indestructible. But now, in front of this giant dragon, with just one strike, they were all electrocuted into pieces on the ground. There was no sign of self-healing at all. Mo-Shur's huge head shook slightly. The corpse ancestor's fighting style had indeed inspired him to a certain extent. But when the energy had reached a level where it could crush the opponent, it didn't matter what fighting style you used. I'm just a crack. In the distance, in the palace, Spartacus's eyes were also filled with extreme shock when he saw this. This giant dragon was simply too powerful, so powerful that it was far beyond his expectations. The minister beside him advised, "Your Majesty, let's quickly go underground and hide. This giant dragon is too strong, too strong." However, Spartacus shook off the minister. He cursed, "I haven't found an opponent for tens of thousands of years. Do you know how lonely it is to be invincible? Watch me fight this guy for 300 rounds. At this point, Spartacus teleported into the sky. In the next moment, his body also rapidly changed. Crack, crack. His bones seemed to be bursting out of his flesh. The muffled sound of bones breaking constantly came from his body. Amidst these muffled sounds, his body was rapidly growing, and at the same time, it was also rapidly changing shape. The color of his body was also rapidly changing. Generally speaking, Mo-Shur wouldn't give the other party a chance to change into their final form. He would usually kill the other party in one strike while they were in the process of changing. This was the so-called disregard of martial ethics. But at this time, he also wanted to see how strong he was after evolving into a super-evolved giant dragon. So he watched this guy constantly change from the side. About a minute later, Spartacus finally completed his transformation. At this time, Spartacus was 10,000 meters long, and his entire body was blood red. He was born with 6 legs. The 2 legs at the back were very well developed. There was a pair of long blood-red antennae on his head. There was also a pair of blood-red wings on his back. He had actually turned into a 10,000-meter-long blood-red grasshopper. This was the so-called locust. At this moment, all the ministers in the palace recognized him. Blood Emperor. Oh my God, how did His Majesty become the Blood Emperor? This is impossible, there must be a mistake. In the legends, the real blood locust wasn't in the form of the corpse ancestor. Instead, it was a huge blood-red grasshopper. It led countless blood-red locusts, and wherever it went, not even a blade of grass was left. And right now, wasn't this the legendary Blood Emperor? In their shock, some people thought of the Blood Emperor that had died before. They quickly went to check the Blood Emperor's corpse. After checking, they found that there was a black birthmark on the Blood Emperor's waist. King. This is the real king. Oh, everyone suddenly understood. So, tens of thousands of years ago, when the king gave the order to exterminate the blood locust had already switched him with the king. No wonder the Blood Emperor they caught had a face full of pustules, and they couldn't see his face clearly. Then, for the past 10,000 years, the Blood Emperor had been ruling them. No wonder His Majesty's personality had changed so much in the past 10,000 years. Previously, these ministers all felt that it was strange, but none of them dared to say it out loud. What a Blood Emperor, he actually deceived the entire General Corpse world for 10,000 years. Chapter 549. At this moment, all of the corpse generals had discovered an unbelievable and incomparably terrifying truth. Their king was actually the Blood Emperor. The real Blood Emperor. As for their real majesty, he had been swapped out. His face was disfigured and his voice was ruined. He had been locked up in prison for tens of thousands of years. At this moment, the Blood Emperor was facing Immortal, who was about the same size as him. The blood-red wings on his back were constantly rubbing against each other, making a strange sound. Hiss, 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 the pair of huge antennae on his head were constantly shaking. The pair of sickle-shaped forelegs were constantly waving left and right. It looked extremely terrifying. In the next moment, the pair of well-developed hind legs fiercely stomped on the ground. Then, it pounced towards Immortal, who was in the sky. Immortal sneered. Flapping its wings in the sky, it didn't try to dodge, nor did it respond. He wanted to see how strong his body was after evolving into a super-evolved giant dragon. In the next moment, crackle, an ear-piercing sound rang out. The Blood Emperor's sickle-shaped forelegs slashed across Immortal's body. However, it was unable to even scratch his scales. It only brought about a burst of sparks. From the ground, one could see that Immortal's body was emitting a string of fiery red lightning. When the Blood Emperor saw this, he was secretly shocked. One must know that he did not just use his forelegs to cut the giant dragon's body. Instead, he added a large amount of energy to his forelegs. However, it did not even leave a mark on this fellow's body. This fellow's scales were too hard. Alright, since its scales are so tough, I'll just tear its wings apart first. When he thought of this, his pair of thick hind legs directly kicked towards Immortal's right wing. Rip, this time, it directly tore apart Immortal's tattered wings. However, not only did Immortal not fall, he was still floating in the sky. He even looked at the Blood Emperor with a playful gaze. The Blood Emperor was even more shocked. No effect. There was indeed no effect. This Blood Emperor was really stupid. If Immortal really relied on his wings to fly, would his wings, which were like tattered bedsheets, be able to support his huge body? His flight was now powered by energy. The Blood Emperor attacked Immortal several times but none of them had any effect. Terrified, he wanted to turn around and flee. However, Immortal shook his head. He spoke in human language. I'm very disappointed in you. The Blood Emperor turned his head and looked at the dragon in the sky. He didn't understand what the dragon was saying, but he knew that the dragon was about to get angry. Thus, his strong hind legs kicked violently, intending to escape. However, would Mo let him escape? What a joke. Mo's 4-kilometer-long tail smashed down. The giant tail moved, and the dark clouds in the sky were immediately split into two. Woo! The huge tail in the air brought about a loud sound of breaking through the air. Like the golden cudgel of a great sage, it smashed towards the Blood Emperor. Bang! There was no suspense. It smashed onto the Blood Emperor's body. Rumble! This tail smashed the Blood Emperor to the ground. On the ground, a 20-kilometer-long and 5-kilometer-wide crack appeared. Countless houses and trees fell into the huge crack. As for the Blood Emperor, he was smashed into two at the waist. It must be known that Mo did not use any ability when smashing the Blood Emperor. It was purely physical strength. Just his physical strength alone was so tyrannical. Could it be that this was the strength of a dragon after reaching super evolution? Actually, Mo did not know that although a dragon's physical strength was strong, it was not to this extent. The reason why Mo's physical strength was so strong was because he was a devil dragon. Since ancient times, the devil dragons that appeared in the 10,000 dragon realm were twice as strong as normal dragons. Moreover, he was a 4-winged devil dragon. His physical strength was 10 times stronger than that of an ordinary giant dragon. Furthermore, the dragon vein had mutated, allowing him to possess the lightning attribute. With the addition of the ice, fire, and lightning attributes, his physical strength was 50 times that of a dragon of the same rank. This was Mo's true strength now. If he did not use energy and purely relied on his physical strength to fight, Mo could beat any dragon of the same rank. He could even rely on his physical strength to challenge a rank 2 or even rank 3 super evolved dragon. If he added the ice, fire, and lightning attributes, as well as the dragon-slaying saber and the dragon-binding rope, he should have no problem challenging a rank 5 super evolved dragon. Therefore, this Blood Emperor was actually arrogant enough to challenge a dragon. Mo really couldn't figure out who had given this guy such courage. Liang Jingru? Yes, Liang Jingru's image in Mo's mind was already very vague. That was already the memory of his previous life. After transmigrating to Earth, he had experienced so much all the way to the flaming beginning continent. He had already forgotten most of the things that happened in his previous life. After a while, Mo came back to his senses and realized that he had been distracted. He could not help but shake his head. He said to the guy who had been smashed in half, "I'm sorry, I actually got distracted. It seems that I didn't respect you. I didn't do it on purpose." Although the Blood Emperor did not understand Mo's words, he actually understood what Mo meant. At this moment, he felt a great humiliation. He was the dignified Blood Emperor who had suppressed the ancient times. Now that he was being humiliated by this dragon in such a way, he was extremely angry. Previously, he had thought that his strength had already reached a level where no ancient corpses could surpass him in the future. He did not even put the legendary dragons in his eyes. But he never thought that in front of a real dragon, he would be so weak. At this moment, Mo did not waste any more words with him. With a thought. Crackle, a bolt of lightning shot out from his tail. Crackle, 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 the two parts of the Blood Emperor's body were instantly covered with lightning. Very quickly, they were electrocuted into two charcoal. Mo's tail flapped. Walala, the two charcoal corpses turned into black powder on the ground and disappeared with the wind. This was the current Mo. A real super-evolved dragon. Even in the great dragon world, he could be considered a powerhouse. Not to mention in a mere general corpse world. Seeing that this dragon had killed the Blood Emperor, all the general corpse generals did not know whether to be happy or afraid. Mo did not hold back. He flapped his wings and circled around in the sky. Then he swooped down from the sky. A gust of cold air shot out from his mouth. Crack, crack, the area within 100 kilometers was instantly frozen. Boom, another flame shot out. The area within 100 kilometers was instantly turned into a sea of fire. No wonder the dragon race was called the strongest race in the universe. How could an ordinary race withstand such a battle power? Since they were the so-called Zergs, they were nothing but trash in front of a real super-evolved giant dragon. Chapter 550. Mo transformed into a four-winged demonic dragon. With a swing of his long tail, a thick bolt of lightning shot out. When he opened his mouth, the area within 100-mile radius would either turn into a world of ice or a sea of fire. What about the general corps's close combat? What about wasting energy? In the face of absolute power, it was not worth mentioning at all. Mo was like the evil dragon in Western legends. He kept circling in the sky, bringing disaster to the general corpse below. The general corpses below constantly let out cries of agony, screams, and sobs. However, Mo didn't show any mercy. When the general corpse invaded the flaming continent, they caused thousands of people to lose their homes. They caused thousands of families on the flaming continent to be separated. They turned thousands of people on the flaming continent into skeletons. Did they ever have the slightest bit of pity? The reason was that they did not treat the humans on the flaming continent as humans. Why should he treat them as humans? Mo had already turned the area within a 1,000-mile radius into a world of ice or a sea of fire. Although the general corpse's self-healing ability was strong, it seemed to have disappeared in the face of any attack from a giant dragon. At this moment, Mo was floating high in the sky. When his 10-kilometer-long body spread its wings, it was like a large dark cloud that covered the sky. He looked at the sea of fire and the world of ice below, then looked at his mind. After killing so many general corps, there was no notification in his mind that his kill points had increased. System, where are my kill points? Mo asked. The system's voice quickly sounded. After evolving into a super-evolved giant dragon, the kill point system has been removed. If you want to evolve, you can only hunt giant dragons. Giant dragon hunt, 0 out of 10, seeing this, Mo shook his head helplessly. He only needed to kill 10 giant dragons to evolve again. Mo asked again. Are there any requirements for the level of the giant dragon hunt? The difference in quality between killing a normal giant dragon and a super-evolved giant dragon is so big. Can't it be the same in quantity? The system's voice sounded again. The giant dragons here are normal giant dragons. 1 evolved giant dragon equals 10 normal giant dragons. 1 super-evolved giant dragon equals 10 evolved giant dragons equals 100 normal giant dragons. Mo nodded and said, in that case, as long as I kill an evolved dragon, I can level up again? The system replied, yes. After understanding this, Mo did not continue to kill these corpse generals. Instead, he gave an order to the blood locust. Slaughter the entire general corpse world. As soon as he gave the order, the blood locusts on the ground immediately flew toward the corpses of Spartacus like a large patch of red rain. 3 days later, Spartacus' 15 million corpses all returned to heaven. No one was spared. At the same time, in these 3 days, the number of blood locusts had increased by 1,000 times. Mo no longer had any attachment to this world of general corpses. At this time, the number of his blood locusts was already God knows how many trillions. In short, as long as they flew up at the same time, they would be able to cover most of the sky. Mo selected half of the blood locusts and put them into his Earth space. The remaining blood locusts were left in this world of general corpses. He gave these blood locusts an order through his mind. Destroy all the general corpses in this world. He watched as the blood locusts flew in the direction of the next city. Immortal retracted his gaze from the red clouds in the sky. Then, with a thought, he appeared tens of thousands of kilometers away. Now that he had become a super-evolved giant dragon, his teleportation distance had increased by 10 times. This did not mean that his dragon shadow steps had already reached the perfection stage. Instead, it was because his own strength had increased that the dragon shadow steps distance had greatly increased. As for perfection, he still had not found the trick to it. He did not know when his dragon shadow step would truly reach perfection. With Immortal's current speed, it only took him half an hour to reach the cave entrance where he had first come to this world. At this time, the cave entrance was already covered in weeds. Clearly, no general corpses had entered or left this place for a long time. Immortal entered the cave and quickly walked forward according to the path in his memory. Half an hour later, he had already returned to the Flaming Land. He immediately returned to Hunting Island No. 1. When the people on the island saw that Immortal had returned, they were all very excited. Immortal had not been seen for a few months, and they did not know where Immortal had gone. Therefore, in these few months, they had always felt that they did not have a backbone. Especially when the general corpses were so chaotic outside, they were all worried that the general corpses would attack Hunting Island No. 1. Although Mr. Mo had given them many demon-suppressing orbs, when Mr. Mo was not here, they always felt that they lacked a leader. Now, Mr. Mo was finally back. After Immortal returned, he took Happy and the other two out of Earth space. The three of them had not returned to Hunting Island No. 1 for a long time. If the first Hunting Island was their home, then they still had some feelings for it. When the people saw that the three of them had returned, they were very enthusiastic. Immortal watched as Happy and the people on Hunting Island No. 1 chatted and laughed. Of course, Happy was using sign language. As soon as she returned to the real world, she could not speak. Immortal also had a smile on his face. It was still the same sentence. When Immortal saw that Happy was happy, he was also very happy. Next, Immortal learned about the current situation of the entire Flaming Land through Guojutao. It could be said that the situation of the Flaming Land was very grim. Many of the previous bases had already been destroyed. If there were only 600 bases that were still holding on. It was estimated that in another half a year, these 600 bases would not be able to hold on. Immortal did not say anything else. Instead, he used his mind to release the blood locusts. Tens of thousands of blood locusts made the people on Hunting Island No. 1 feel their scalps go numb and a chill run down their spines. The large number of blood locusts turned into a blood cloud and flew out of Hunting Island No. 1. Guojutao, who was somewhat feminine, asked. Mr. Mo, this is, Immortal replied, blood locusts. They can take care of the general corpses. Guojutao was very surprised. The general corpses were extremely strong. Coupled with their abnormal self-healing ability, even a Grand Desolate Master could not kill them. Now, they could just send a swarm of locusts. Immortal did not answer. He said to Guojutao. You must be tired when I wasn't around. Go and rest for a few days. Guojutao said, but those blood-red locusts, if we don't do anything, will they? Immortal still did not answer on the live broadcast. We'll know in a few days. Guojutao had no choice but to nod and say, yes, Mr. Mo. You're tuning in to the UnparalleledSwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.